So this is James chapter 2, the scripture for the 26th of June. Now you might know that Martin Luther, the great reformer, famously called the epistle of James an epistle of straw. This chapter, chapter 2, regularly reminds me of that as Luther took issue with how James contrasted Paul's justification by faith alone. You see, James also, I imagine, believes in justification by faith alone, but isn't willing to allow faith to operate on its own. But before we get to James's treatment of faith and works, let's look at James's take on favoritism. That's what the chapter leads with. So, the favoritism that James denounces here is a specific kind. It's preferential treatment given to the rich, those who are the haves, as Paul would say in 1 Corinthians, as opposed to those who are not, or those who are nothing. In fact, James asserts that God has chosen the poor to be rich in faith. So James isn't advancing some sort of pseudo-equality concept of treatment here, where we pretend we don't see differences between rich and poor. No, what James is talking about is not continuing to favor the rich when they've been favored so much. In our ongoing national conversation about race, there are some people who want to suggest that some idea of colorblindness will solve our problems. And that's a well-intentioned idea, even if I don't think it holds water. Some may even see James's theology, as it's sketched out here, supporting such a notion. But if we insist on equality in the American church after nearly 4 centuries of inequality, there's a problem. Sort of like a NASCAR driver saying, hey, even though I started, and already got 100 laps in before you started, let's just pretend like that's not an issue anymore. That sort of equality doesn't quite work. You see, the median black American household, I've got a link below with my source on this, the median black American household has 10 cents of wealth for every $1 of wealth owned by the median white American household. That's 10% of the total wealth possessed by white families, is what the median black family has. This is a result of nearly 400 years of favoring one class of people over another. So to insist on equal treatment now misses Jesus' point that James is getting at. It misses the whole idea of love your neighbor as yourself. Now, shifting to the idea of faith and works, James offers the first century equivalent to saying, I'll pray for you. He says if someone wishes another Christian well without taking care of their bodily needs, without offering to meet actual needs, they're not doing it right. Our faith isn't just about praying, even though praying is powerful and an effective means of changing the world. It includes action on our part as well. We can't just think and pray about an issue. We also need to act. That's what James calls us to do. To distinguish between faith and works, James believes, or to distinguish between prayer and action even, is to split hairs. Sustainable faith is going to require action, just as sustainable action is going to require faith that your action's not in vain, that you're serving a higher power here. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a theologian in Nazi Germany. He wrote a number of books. One of his more famous ones is called The Cost of Discipleship, or more accurately translated, really just discipleship. I've got a link below to a quote from that. But he wrote about the difference between cheap grace, that is faith without works, and costly grace, that's faith including works. Bonhoeffer says that cheap grace is grace without discipleship, grace without the cross, grace without Jesus Christ living and incarnate. Whereas conversely, costly grace is costly because it costs a person their lives. It's grace because it gives us the only true life. So I want to encourage you, embrace costly grace by joining faith and works together. If you'd like to read the rest of that quote, you can check it out in the link below. Now I wonder, where is your faith calling you to act this day? That's all for James chapter 2. On Monday the 29th, we'll be looking at James chapter 3. May God bless you in your reading of Scripture.